Hello and welcome back to the Obojima Podcast. My name is Jeremiah and I'm joined with Ari and Adam. And we are the writers of Obojima. You are joining us for our weekly writers meeting where we sit down, we talk Obojima, we talk D&D, we talk cool stuff. This week we're talking about something I think is quite interesting, the stiltwalker community in the Gale Fields. This, if you blink and you miss it, it's in the PDF. It's a singular paragraph and the opening lines that explain the Gale Fields. And it was kind of just like a fun idea that I don't know which one of us had. Certainly not me.
That was a me.
That was a you?
Yeah.
Adam had a great idea. Threw a little paragraph
come
in
out
there.
Of a conversation we had. Like one of you guys could have been like, "Hey, what about dudes on stilts?"
All right, I'll take credit for it. It was all me, everyone.
This was all actually.
This was all me, and I'm great at this.
Ari and I are just a part of Jeremiah's dream.
Somewhere
we actually don't exist.
Somewhere in a dark room, I'm playing with two toys that I've made out of hair.
That's right.
In a pillowcase.
Make them on stilts, Jeremiah. Oh, that's good, Adam. Where were we?
The Gale Fields.
That's where we were.
So the Stiltwalker paragraph basically describes a nomadic group of people that use stilts to kind of overcome the unique challenges of the Gale Fields. They also have tall, mobile like huts and buildings and things like that. Most everyone who lives in the Gale Fields have learned to exist in harmony with the beasts and inhabit the fields.
And you can encounter them. They're in the Wandering Encounters table.
You can. They're stilts nomads. So I think it's time we actually figure out what this means.
Have a little chat about these.
And I'll hand it over to you too.
Great.
All right, you do all the work.
We'll be the puppet.
Okay, so I think the thing that's maybe the most interesting to me is their mobile buildings. Now, when you think mobile buildings, I guess there's maybe a couple different ways. It's either like backpacking, or like maybe that's like they strap all like the huts disassemble and they wrap them
like
up.
A yurt.
Yeah, and then they stick it on a beast of burden and they travel. Or are the buildings fully structured, staying intact, and then they move either on their own, or through magic or by a beast? How are you imagining
When I was
it?
first thinking about this, it might have been because I was watching, I don't know if he's Swedish or Danish, but he builds these thing called strand beasts.
Yeah.
And it's like these, they're not animatronic, but they're powered by wind. Mm-hmm. So he just sets them up. He puts some big sails on them, and as the kinetic energy pushes them forward, they just automatically, they're engineered in such a way. They don't have engines. They don't have any, electricity or whatever. They're just powered by wind. And I thought about these things as kind of that maybe they're up on a platform. Their hut is on top of this platform, but there's these long stilts, and they could be kind of with levers and things, and maybe they're pulling them, or maybe they're just blown by the wind, and they could be just sort of guided, or they sail, like they can actually direct sort of where they want to go. So it might be neat that they're just like the winds of Obojima will blow us wherever we're supposed to be, kind of deal.
I think there's something really cool about that too. And the idea, they're called the Gale Fields, and it could be that like certain winds blow through and they're like, okay, now we're on the move, right? And so they'll raise their sails.
Yeah, it's like it's the north wind.
Yeah.
And
so they're kind of drifting along that way. I think that's really cool.
It's really interesting because it's almost like they'd almost have like sailing terminology that they have co-opted for the fields.
And I was thinking, the tales of the tall grass. When I was thinking of the Gale Fields, like most of the Gale Fields is probably maybe 6 foot tall grass or 10 foot tall grass, and that you're probably hacking your way if you're on foot through it, and either going along paths that have already been carved out with like machetes or whatever. But then these people have just kind of realized, all we've got to do is just build above it. And so they're actually seeing over the top of the Gale Fields, all the grass, and they kind of have and maybe they have towers that go way up, maybe like 15-foot towers. Maybe they're kind of precarious. I was also kind of thinking of the in Fury Road, where they've got the
The pole
dudes
cats
on the poles. Yeah. And they're like, and they could do that where they like lift somebody up and they get them way over and they're like, oh yeah, we're supposed to go left, you know.
The idea of like being able to look into the tall grass and see subtle movements and know what's in there, right? Like they would know that area
Hill
so
dragon,
well.
like coming at you.
Mm-hmm. Like,
Wow.
oh, like, you know, a mile off or whatever, there's a pack of howlers out there, and you could tell because they're in, like, you know, you could see whatever kind of the way the grass shakes or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's
This is interesting. So let's talk about the Gale fields and the quote unquote tall grass, because I don't think this is something we discuss in the book at all. I mean, in the description, I know when I was thinking the tall grass, I did imagine that there would be portions of the grass, like I would say, like, you know, like there's a big portion that's like it's up to your knees, your thighs, and there's paths in between, and then as it gets higher, maybe it's at your waist, or even higher, it's like fully encompassing you. But you're kind of describing something where it's like this whole field is like ginormous.
You never said how
stalks.
tall the grass was, Jeremiah.
And that's on you.
That's on you. I can imagine some tall grass, buddy.
It's the tallest of grass.
Yeah, this is the tallest of grass. And I was thinking, like, there's stuff, and I don't know if I think it's probably in Africa, but it's like this. They call it elephant grass, and they're like, if you walk through it and it brushes on you, it can cut through your clothes. Like, it is gnarly. Yeah. So there could be. You know, this may be something that we develop is like there's different kinds of grass out here. You know, there could be grass that's, you know, if you run through elephant grass, you're taking damage as you go.
Wow.
But there could be some that have different properties, or there could be, you know, if we called something singing grass or dream grass, or, you know, whatever.
You might have grass that's all coiled up, and like when you step on it, it all like unfurls, so it looks like it's short grass or whatever, and as you walk across it, it all starts to.
What if the stiltwalkers have a way of cutting it without it releasing its tension, and they use it to like spring certain traps or things like that? They put big bundles of them together and they all release at the same time.
Makes me think of like a Zelda thing where you step on it and your buddy like flicks it and you go spring up like.
That's really cool. Yeah, they might
15
have
feet
like some sort of cool. That's a weapon that they could have created that could launch things, and that's really neat.
So this whole group, this whole culture of stiltwalkers in some way, or these nomads, are utilizing. It sounds like they're really resourceful with like the use of the wind and the grass and the reed that they're able to find. Are there stilts also made out of are they like bamboo? Or are you imagining they're logs that they're cutting down? What are your guys' thoughts on envisioning how this works? I know those machines are like made out of like PVC pipe and things like that. So bamboo would be the counterpart to the real world,
right,
as we've all
PVC.
thought.
Yeah.
PVC pipe is nature's bamboo. Wait, that's not right.
Well, yeah.
Bamboo is nature's PVC pipe. There we go.
Or maybe there's a bamboo, or there's like kind of like a balsa wood that's more structurally sound, like that's light but flexible. But I guess bamboo's like the best.
In Oregon, we have a lot of lodgepole pines, which are small, thin, very green pine trees that like really, really flexy. But you know, you don't want to. I mean, I guess you don't want to build a house out of it because they never are really that thick. But they're, you know.
Yeah, this is where we consult your arborist friend.
Yeah, exactly. Let me open the pages.
That's right.
I also like the idea that, you know, the fact that their dwellings are high up and they spend a lot of time above, you know, I guess the grass line. I don't know what that. That, you know, we have, you know, there's even on here, there's wind eels. You might have, they might have these shepherds that kind of, this is what they drive through the grass, are these eels or some sort of schools of fish, and to kind of play with that nautical kind of theme on land. Could be interesting as well. Like, what do they do out here, right? Well, if they're shepherds that kind of follow these flocks or these schools, I guess, of fish, then, you know, that's what they're doing here. Or are they hunters? Like, how do they make it out here? The Gale Fields, as we talk about, this is as you're making your way from, you know, west to east, things get more dangerous. The Gale Fields is one of those first places where truly dangerous things can exist.
Yeah.
How do they live out here? How do they survive? You know, being up high lets them see things, but that means everybody gets to see them as well. So how do they make it out here? What is their culture that allows them to do that?
Makes me think of like, because I'm imagining as you're talking, like they've got schools of these wind eels that are kind of, they might have like food for them, and that kind of keeps the eels close so that they don't kind of wander off. But then I was imagining there's a monster that we came up with, the barracuda, and those things could come in and like kind of try to take. And I'm like thinking, well, how do they ward off a barracuda?
Mm-hmm.
Or like,
are there certain eels that are like their guard eels? That like they,
like
kind of
the
circle
dog,
the camp and stuff
the
like
wolf
that.
dog.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so maybe that's something that they have. They might really abhor fire because fire out in the Gale Fields is probably awful. So like, well, then how do they heat their homes? How do they do those types of things?
Yeah, I'll have to remember how it works. I think we have crackling jasper, which is a thing. Maybe crackling jasper also emits heat, and so they like often trade for it. Because it's probably something you can't find in the Gale Fields very often.
There would be like, they'd have like a little sort of iron pot that they put the crackling jasper in. It kind of heats their hut.
You can imagine they like might have like a strip of eel or whatever that they wrap around the jasper, and like they'll just carry that, and throughout the day it's kind of cooking slowly.
Yeah.
And they can smell it when it gets right. Oh,
It's ready.
the eel is nice
Peel
and
it off.
tender.
Yeah.
I wonder if the tall grass. Well, this is interesting. So for the tall grass to be a danger and also protection for them, I think we also have to put something really dangerous in the tall grass.
Oh yeah.
But my thought process is like, if their machines are moving in a pack of howler, like let's say they're moving through like 3 feet or 4 feet tall grass where the howlers can still see everything, not very dangerous grass on the scale of dangerous grass, not very dangerous. And the howlers rush after them, and they retreat into the some of these patches of grass that are maybe 10 or 15 feet where just their huts are at the top are safe. Is there a thing that's like the howlers like, oh, we're not going in there because that's where it gets dangerous? Is it either that there's something inside the really tall grass that's scary, or are they really good? Like when the howlers are inside there, it's like that's where these nomads have the advantage because they can pick at them with like long spears from the top, and like that's like their fighting style or their defensive system is all based on like when we're on top of our houses in these tall grassy fields is when we're the most equipped to combat things. Or are they able to just like hide in the grass in some way? Or is there another creature in there that, maybe they're equipped to combat, but everyone else isn't?
What do they have and use? And are they using first age tech in any way? Like, do they suddenly turn on all these floodlights, just kind of like at nighttime and just like they could see
They have
everything?
like an air siren.
Yeah.
Hill Dragon's like, there it is. Go away.
It's pretty cool. I don't know. That's
I like that dangerous stuff is in the grass, and that maybe they haven't. If anybody knows what lives in the tall grass, it's these people, because they've roamed all over, and these are the kind of the people you want to contact and be like, hey, I'm not going to take a courier brigade track, but I want to get to this other place that I've heard that's in the Gale Fields, but I've got to hack my way through the tall grass. These are the people you want to talk to. And then you're like, what am I going to encounter in there? And they're like, you're going to encounter these things, and here are all the signs you got to look for.
What's something that would potentially naturally hunt in tall grass that at a small scale isn't dangerous, but like at a large scale is terrifying? Like
Ari loves swarms.
Well, I mean, not even like a swarm, but I mean like a fox. A fox would run around in a field, and like when a fox is the size of a puppy, you're like, oh, that's cute, and it's attacking mice. But what if you're the mouse now, and this fox is like 15 feet tall, and it's like, you don't go in there because it'll eat a howler. This thing is huge and it's quick. Or is there something like that that's like not necessarily this big nasty monster, but something that like just exists within the fields that could be a danger?
I mean, anything that can get through the grass without disturbing grass. You know what I mean? Without disturbing it too
like
much.
A snake.
Yeah. Something that could kind of wind through it. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Like a gnat or something like that. That's like the size of an apple, and you're like, oh.
I mean, the thing that I can't stand are the concept of like ticks. And you might have, you might have these giant ticks that show up, and it's like, you got to get it off, and you don't want to really use a torch to do it because you're in.
Because you'll light everything up.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, how do you do it? So you have these you might have these iron brands that you use for that.
It could also be, like the stiltwalkers,
Crackling Jasper, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. You could hold it up and. I was thinking about areas that are kind of marshy, and you could get
bogs and stuff,
giant leeches. But if you're on stilts, the leeches won't connect to them.
Yeah.
So maybe one of the things as adventurers, you kind of have to. They might loan you stilts. They might look, you're going to head through this marsh, and there are giant leeches there that'll just suck your blood out. So you better learn how to use stilts, and so you can walk through those things.
Another thing I was thinking, this is kind of a little off topic here, but I was thinking of I don't know what those are called. Whatever the wind sail thing that people do on the ocean, where it's just a board and it has an incredibly long fin and they have a sail that they're out there. I don't know what that would be called.
Windsurfing?
Sure, windsurfing. Heck if I know.
Yeah.
I sit on the computer all day. But that, I mean, if we're kind of using the grass as a parallel to water, then being able to surf across the top of this with giant parasails and things like that. Because the stilts are probably not super fast. I don't know how quick. I don't think they're getting into a sprint because they don't have you can only go so quickly without a knee.
Yeah. Was that Crawl or where they're on those giant and they've got stilt legs and they're running and they ride on? It's a movie. It's like Crawl or Willow or.
You're thinking of Dark Crystal.
Dark Crystal.
Okay,
Yeah,
Dark Crystal.
Those giant things.
Yeah, they could run.
But they have 4 legs.
That's true.
If these stiltswalkers are on 4 legs, I feel like they're they're less cool. I mean, they're cool, but they're more creepy. That's for sure.
Are there creatures that they have domesticated that are like this? You know what I mean? That have long legs. And I think about in Magic, there's in Golgari have the Golgaris. There's the Stiltwalker. It might be called the Golgari Stiltwalker. I don't remember. But yeah, it's this insect that has these really long legs, and so there might be something like that they have domesticated here. That might be their initial. This is how they got started, was domesticating these things, and then kind of their society is built around that.
This could also be the secretary bird for the courier brigade, but just the larger version of that. Imagine a 12-foot tall secretary bird that's just
It could be that they have secretary birds, and that's where the courier brigade learned to use them from.
Right.
Yeah.
But they've just never been able to domesticate the big version.
I think we're now that we've said it out loud, though, I think we have to officially use that.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, that's true. We haven't really.
Yeah. If you haven't looked up a secretary bird, they're very cool, and we were thinking of using those as the model for what the courier brigade uses, because
their favored mount. Yeah.
Ari writes in for the courier brigade that they ride giant bird mounts, but I, unlike Ari, don't like the aesthetic of an axe beak, so I chose a secretary bird.
I just like flightless birds as mounts. I just think it's amazing.
Birds and dwarfs. This guy.
You could have a giant sort of I don't know, dish or whatever, and kind of surf, like you said, along the top of the grass, because that could be a way. But that would be a very speedy way to travel, and it's I'm kind of wondering, okay, if I needed to go fast or have a scout to go out, they would go scooting across the grass, but then it would be all right, we'll catch up with you.
I mean, it could be that they they'll move a building near one of the highest mounds, if you imagine rolling hills, they'll go to the top of a hill and then they'll crawl to the highest point. Maybe they attach their stilts and they'll get 60 feet off the ground, and then they'll leap off with a sled, and they'll use that to get a ton of momentum and speed, and they'll sled across the hills on top of the grass.
I mean, the idea of having these gliders or whatever that kind of skim across there, but using their stilts as a way to kind of get more distance is kind of cool. I'm
kind of thinking of the Valley of the Wind, is this group of people. They don't move, but Nausicaa is kind of their scout in some way. And so like if these people are like, if the stilts are kind of stuck at a certain pace, they'd probably want a few people that are faster in some way. And maybe not everyone is good at gliding. I don't know. Maybe it's like a skill that is difficult. It could be that like in the gale winds, it's like in the gale field, it's maybe dangerous. It's like the winds move, like don't do this because the winds change too often. And it could be a situation where like you think you're gliding one way and the winds change and it sends you way off in a different direction. And so they use these kind of like with limits, that's it's a cautious thing. We do it when we need to.
I mean, do they use kites similar to like sky kite?
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, do they like you might have your
like a glider,
stilt dwelling stuff like that, and they might have like a line, and at the end of the line is this kite. A little seat in it or whatever, and you have these scouts that are,
and you're just like holding them.
And that makes sense as long as they're attached, they're safe.
Yeah, and pull them in, and
they're like, oh my gosh,
what do you see? And they might be like, they might have these signals or these like little flags or whatever to show what it's about, and you can do some fun stuff with that.
That's pretty cool. I like that quite a bit.
Like a flag, and it's just got like a frowny face on it, like don't go here, or like a monster head. I like too that like if you had. This, because I'm thinking like this probably culture communicates with flags.
Because they're not going to do it with like, I don't know if sound would actually travel well because of the wind.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
So them being able to see from like high point to high point, like when they're on stilts, them using flags or mirrors or something like that to flash light at each other.
Yeah.
Like,
they could use tones. If it's like, if you imagine you had like a big set of tubes like reeds on your belt, and you just grab one of them and hold it up to the wind and it goes like
yeah
but I don't know how far. I have no idea how far sound travels.
I mean, it could be that's just sort of a localized, like if you've got scouts that are out in the tall grass, they're a couple 100 yards away, you could tone with that. But like let's say a mile away there's another stilt walker, but you just see the grass is like this, and the animated version is like two flags pop up and they go like this, and you're like, oh, or
the idea of using smoke, right? Like you pop a flare and like suddenly like this trail of pink smoke or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, things like that.
That's pretty cool.
They need help,
Yeah,
I love their kind of silent communications.
Is this culture? Do they have a robust kind of sign language that they use? Things like that. Or is it just, simply like when they have to communicate across long distances, they have ways to do that, which I just think could be cool.
Yeah. It could be flags. It could be like they hold up these poles with like metal, cut out, like a circle means something, or a triangle means something else, or a square means something. And
something I'm also thinking about is if they have such strong access to wind, they could generate like simple machines, gears, something that, like a wind turbine should be accessible to them. And if they have the capability to make machines that naturally move, have these complex movements, something like a gear system to power something.
It's kind of cool. I'm imagining like when they do stop for, the whatever limited time, they might have these gear driven, like wind driven ways to dig wells, to just like they go in and suddenly just drill down and they can have a well and be able to get water out here. I'm just thinking about how do they survive out here, so I'm just like wondering if maybe they just can do things like that.
That's also a way for them to, if they're in a very windy area, to lock their system, like lock their buildings down. Like they have individual
screw the legs
things that bore in and then keep them
them
into the ground.
That's cool. Makes me think of like caravans that go across the Sahara Desert, and they've got to know where the oases are. And so you might have these things that the stiltwalker tribes have sort of, there's preset places like oases where they've built things like the wells, and so they can move from place to place like that. Or if they're going out on their own, then they have their sort of automated systems that they can use through the wind and to drill wells, or to like these like almost like clear cutting where they can cut areas of the grass, because the grass will just grow back. And
I mean, the grass might actually grow almost like, I can imagine like the animation of it grows you could see it growing. It grows so fast. Like, you know, like you clear it.
Yeah.
But if you don't like lay something out, you know, my wife does, you know, a lot of she works in a community garden and all this kind of stuff, and people always bring kind of like canvas, like or burlap to lay down to keep weeds from growing. But if you know, let's say you clear cut this area and you got to put something down, otherwise you'll actually see it start growing immediately until it reaches its full height, you know, kind of thing. So that's something that could be kind of cool here. They need ways to mitigate all that.
Maybe when they're going to stay somewhere for a night, they'll put a giant pole in the middle with a huge turbine at the top and fan blades, and they mount it in the ground, and it clears a huge circle in the field, and then they rip it out and they move all their things in, and then by the end of the night, you know, it grows back by the time they leave or something.
And there could be like they've developed a series. This would be also another thing we could think about is like they've developed magic items and spells that are particular to just surviving out here, like ways of like I was thinking when you were talking about the burlap, they lay down the burlap, but then they inscribe magic symbols on it, and it just kind of creates this magical barrier.
That's cool.
And then as soon as they pull it up, it's like it just instantly starts growing back.
The other thing I was thinking about is, you know, I'm imagining what does it look like when they stumble upon a major road and they want to set up like a camp to make sales and to trade, because obviously that's pretty important to nomads. Is like, you know, if they're going to fully exist in the Gale Fields, they probably need trade from outside of the Gale Fields for certain comforts. And so you could imagine that they'd move like 4 of their major houses in like kind of pillar formation, and they'd pull a giant canvas,
like an awning
that kind of covers it, and then all of those which have maybe turbines on them are potentially powering things down below that are useful for the trade.
Fun.
I was thinking of simple machines that they could produce, and I couldn't think of a lot, but one thing I am familiar with is something that people make in bushcraft a lot, is simple lathes. So just by hand, it's usually done by pressing your foot down, but you can make a tourney, like a pulley system that operates a lathe. And so with a turbine, they could be, you know, wood carvers if they
That's
wanted
really cool.
to.
I actually like that a lot.
Driftwood maybe, or maybe driftwood isn't the best
I mean,
idea,
that's
but
really cool. And that makes me think about like having, you know, musical instruments, right? Like, you know, you might have flutes and all this kind of stuff. So again, a natural stuff that they might have all these kind of like chime type things like attached to their homes.
Pipe organs.
Yeah,
you know,
pipe organs.
Like bagpipes.
Yeah.
And, we were just talking about bagpipes this morning. And like, you could have the, you know, this makes me think of, you know, this, they could have the living platforms, but then they could also have just these almost like a wagon that follows behind that then sort of, they pull a bunch of levers and it just goes wick, 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 and transforms into a market stall, and the awning goes kind of flops over, and then the propellers pop up and start spinning with the wind, and then it just starts to automate. It's like there's a lot of this like automation, but it's all done through this mechanical. I remember there was this one guy, I saw it on Instagram or something, and he had
shout out to Instagram.
Shout out to Instagram. Pump, he had this like organ that was all pulleys and levers
with steel balls.
Yeah.
Super cool. And I was like, they could have something
mesmerizing.
like that.
You could almost so you know how I don't know what these things are, the little crank music box type things. I guess they're I have no idea what they're called, but they're like little steel contraptions, probably with like 12 notes, and you crank it, and there's a bar that turns with different pins, and it like makes the like it repeats the 30-second song over and over
like
and over
again.
Thumb
harp. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say if they had a giant one of these that, you know, that follows them, they could almost have like a, like if they are merchants trying to sell,
theme song,
it would almost be like an ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Where it's like as they're coming into an area, they would like roll this thing down. As it rolls to the grass, it would
hear it coming.
It just
That's
and they just
cool.
engage it when they're close. You know, like that's really cool. I mean, they could actually become. You might have some talented woodworkers here that use this type of technology to have automata, almost like kind of like a puppet show type thing, right? Like they just kind of engage this whole thing. It's all wind powered, and they, you know, you have these things going through their routines and stuff.
Now I wonder if they can compress air in like cloth
Bellows.
sacks or things like that, and then release them. I don't know where I saw this, so I apologize for not knowing how to explain what I'm about to explain. But it's like a puppet system where it's like actually, have you ever seen like the people that are standing, you press the button, they fall in?
Yeah.
It's like the reverse of that, where they shoot air, like really high powerful air, and it animates the thing.
Yeah, it's like
and then it
the
drops
used
back
car
down.
lots or something.
Yeah,
where
but it's all made out of wood. It's all like a little
Oh,
marionette character.
Wow.
And I don't know how much it's like 100 psi, and they shoot it filled with air, and it like stands up and like moves, and then it drops back down.
I can see that where you've got like I'm thinking of this, like if you took the like hide and scraped it really thin, so it's still capable of withstanding some force. You stitched a bunch of hides together in the form of a person, and you did it like 12 feet tall.
Terrifying.
And then you outlined it with wood planks, like just little bits of wood to kind of give it, and it would kind of clatter into as you push the air through.
That's neat.
Yeah, and it could you could have tell myths and stories through it. They don't have to be huge, but they could be big enough. And then you've got Oni wands that are bad, and all the kids go, ah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also do something where they use animal bones, and they do kind of like they make from the bones they make they put drill holes in it so that when they're doing what you're saying, like you reassemble the skeleton and you kind of blow air through it, and it makes different notes as it blows through there, as it kind of also animates, anyway, that's pretty grislier, cool. But also really cool.
I love it.
Well, it could be, they have different stories that tell different myths, and some are heroic myths, but some are like, the land of the dead, and they're like, oh my gosh. Everybody freaks out on the Halloween.
Yeah, or like a particular like villain. It's a recurring character, maybe in the
Clatterbones.
Yeah, Clatterbones and
confirmed. Clatterbones confirmed.
Oh, Clatterbones.
I really dig it. I think this is such an interesting, I guess, culture and group of people that I feel has a very unique. Like they have things that I guess are not too dissimilar from other portions of Obojima, but it feels like they've really made it their own within this group of people.
And then as a player, you conceivably could be from this group.
Yeah.
Right? Like this might be where you're from.
This is the background.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is cool. That'd be fun. Yeah, you'd have tons of cool skills.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Well, tell us what you think about this this community. What would you add? What would maybe a subclass from this group look like, or a feat from this group, or a background from this group look like?
Spells, magic items.
I think the spells are really interesting.
Yeah.
What spells would they have come up with? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear it. And if you haven't already, join us on Discord, follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. You can listen to us on Amazon Music and Apple Music, and Spotify, and you can find us on D&D Beyond.
What?
You can get the PDF on D&D Beyond or our website if you haven't already. Thank you so much. Subscribe, like, comment. We will catch you later.